Hey guys, welcome back to Tony the Technician's channel. So, as you saw in my previous video, we finally finished up the oil pan install. Everything's good. Thank God that's done. It took long enough. But today, we're actually going to be moving on to the starter. I have an MSD Dynaforce starter. It's a gear reduction for the 168 tooth Flexplate. The part number is 50951. If you're interested, it is pretty expensive. It's around $300 if I remember correctly. So it does come with the sheet showing that it passed its test, and then it comes with a pretty good set of instructions for the starter. Goes over depth engagement, the distance in between the pinion gear and the ring gear, and then it goes over the gauging for when the pinion gear actually engages the flex plate or flywheel, what the gauging should be in between the teeth. It goes which the distance in between the pinion gear when it's not engaged and the ring gear should be at least 1/16 of an inch. In between the teeth when it is engaged should be 20 thousandths of an inch to 35 thousandths of an inch. The torque specs for it are going to be 32 foot-pounds. It comes packaged pretty well in a formed styrofoam. It comes with the gear shim already installed in it. I called MSD because I thought I was missing mine. They said they come pre-installed, which that shim is basically what sets the depth for how far the pinion actually engages the flywheel or flex plate. And then you are also provided 2 shims and the 2 bolts in order to mount your starter. And then you got the starter, which is pretty nice. It's lighter than the original, smaller, gear reduction for higher compression engines. I mean, it's not light, it's a starter. They're going to be heavy, but it's lighter than OEM. What else? So this is the pinion gear, and when you get it mounted on the block, in order to check engagement depth, this pinion actually pulls out, and you can check it up against your flex plate or flywheel. But let's go over some of the tools that you will need in order to do this. My engine is obviously out of the vehicle, so it's going to be a little bit easier for me. If you're doing it on the vehicle, it's a little bit more of a pain in the ass. If you got a lift, it's not too bad either. So you're going to need your torque wrench set at 32 foot-pounds. Then I'm using a stubby flathead screwdriver in order to pry that pinion gear out once I get it bolted to the block. In order to check the gauging in between the teeth when the pinion gear is engaged into the flex plate, you can use a paper clip, which is about 35 thousandths of an inch, which is the preferred gauging in between the teeth. So a regular paper clip, I couldn't find one, but I did have small wire, and I used my digital caliper and measured it. It is 35 thousandths of an inch. Then you'll need your socket, which is 9/16, all your hardware, and then a feeler gauge as well, in order to make sure that when the pinion gear is not engaged, and you got the flex plate here. So say this is how it's mounted. Your flex plate should not be more than 1/16 of an inch from this when it's not engaged, which is 0.0625 of an inch. So just combine some of your feeler gauges, make sure you have at least that distance in between that pinion gear and your flex plate. But first step, just make sure your engine block is cleaned off where your starter is going to be mounted, and then we'll get the starter mounted up without any shims first. Make sure the gauging is good, If it needs to be adjusted, we can install these, and then we'll move on from there. Alright, so as you can tell, I've mounted the starter. It's not torqued down to 32 foot-pounds, but I do have them snug. My block does allow for it to be a straight pattern or staggered. I put it as staggered because that's how my original starter was bolted up. But the clearance I was talking about, see the gap in between the pinion gear and the ring gear, that needs to be at least 1/16 of an inch, or 0.0625. I have my feeler gauge set up for 0.0625, and as you can tell, I have good clearance. Still got a gap in between there, so we're good here. Your next clearance is going to be to engage this onto the flex plate and take your paper clip and actually check in between the gears. I'll show you that in just 1 second. Okay, so as you can see, I have the pinion gear engaged, and what you're going to want to check is in between the tip of that gear and the groove in this gear. If you can fit the paper clip in there, you're good. I already checked mine, it is good. I would show you, but I'm using both my hands right now. And when you do that, the gear might end up staying just because it's held up against the flex plate. And obviously now that the gear isn't fully engaged, I have plenty of room. But besides that, when you do this, check multiple areas on your flex plate or flywheel, because you want to make sure that you do not have a bent flex plate or flywheel. And then once you've done that, you'll check the engagement depth, which is how far this pinion gear actually engages the flex plate. It should be about 1/3 to a half of the flex plate. If it's more, that's when the shim needs to be installed behind the pinion gear. It comes pre-installed. Mine actually engages a little too far, even though that shim is in there. I contacted MSD and they're looking for a different shim for me. I'm not too worried about it right now. I'm still gonna bolt it up, and if it works, that's fine. If not, then hopefully they get that part to me soon. But now that you've made your measurements, say you can't get your paper clip in between the gears when it is engaged. That is when you will be using your shims that bolt underneath of the starter along inside of here. It's pretty simple. Start with one, check your clearance. If it's still not enough, that's when you can double stack them. But do it one at a time just to make sure, then you're good to go. Not really going to go over wiring yet. That's pretty self-explanatory. It's also in the instructions. If you guys have any questions or anything, please let me know. Also, another thing I wanted to go over, I forgot I even bought it, and I got it out last night and I started looking at it. I actually got this small block Chevy rebuild book a while back, and I was looking at it last night, and it's got a lot of good information in here I forgot about. Here's the book number, SA116, or you can just look up the name of the book. Some of them do come with a DVD. Mine did not. It was cheaper that way. I didn't need video. But it goes over disassembly, cleaning, specs, parts that you'll need in order to do the rebuild. Talking about the machine shop if you need any work done, good components, what to look for, how to measure things. It goes over a lot of information. Mine has water damage. It was sitting in the back of my car and rain got in the back of my car, and that was pretty shitty. But see, here it goes over the starter. Another thing I like in the back of the book, it actually, you know, it goes into installation and break-in and all that, but it actually moves into the torquing sequences of certain parts, like your intake manifold, your heads, installing your thrust bearing and things like that, your firing order, how to set up your distributor. And then it goes into torque specs, specific components on the engine, what to torque them to, size of the bolt head, and then here is a general just layout of what certain bolts, how, what grade. It goes to 13 foot-pounds if lubed, or dry it's 17. It goes into a lot of information. It also shows you how to install your pistons, what direction, and setting up your timing chain. It has a lot of good information. I think I paid like 20 bucks for this book. Forgot about it, but it's a great book. Other than that, that's it for now. I think I'm going to be moving on to installing the harmonic balancer now. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned, like and subscribe. If you guys have any comments, please leave them below.